Bernard Bobby Jackson was a pirate born in the slums and outcroppings of London in the mid-1700s. When he was a wee lad, he stowed away on a pirate ship and took on the sailor life. Now, as a healthy 30-year-old, Bobby sails the Caribbean, living the good life pillaging boats and plundering towns. Occasionally he runs into weird boats like this one, and weird people like this guy, and even this guy. Bobby has a normal crew of other good-natured pirates who all loved and supported him after he earned the title of captain on the Great Turtle a few years ago. But everything changed after an innocent stop at the Scrum and Chum, a local hub of rum galore. Things weren't very clean there, and Bobby had to admit the water did look pretty funky, but he continued to drink it anyway. Bobby, unlike most pirates, wasn't an alcoholic, so he took pride in living a healthy lifestyle. Unfortunately, the Scrum and Chum's water supply was right next to the bathroom. About a week later, Bobby started to feel sick. Unfortunately, the fluids he consumed during his stop at the Scrum and Chum were contaminated with Salmonella enterica, which is usually found in feces or urine and can be spread through bad sanitation or flies. He had a bad headache and a strong cough. Red spots even developed on his chest from the rhonchi in his lung bases, which can attribute to the horrible cough. He can't pillage and plunder like he used to. In fact, he can barely stand. The next week, his fever rose even higher, and he started to see things like that one weird ship where that guy with the octopus beard. That was weird. He also got really bad diarrhea, which wasn't good for sea life. His stomach made grumbly noises all the time, but he wasn't hungry. He could barely get out of bed because he felt so weak, and he also stunk up the ship with his bathroom problems. Also, some intestinal hemorrhaging appeared because of congestion in Bobby's Peyer's patches, which line his intestines. This was extremely painful, even worse than getting shot by rich, angry people. The fever continued to the third week, and Bobby started to become delirious. Bobby had to stay in his cot and become a useless, stinky, dead weight. Bobby felt empty inside, partly because he couldn't fulfill his usual pirate duties, and partly because everything he tried to eat just went right through him. The crew considered leaving him at the next port. However, in the fourth week, his fever started to go down and he doesn't go to the bathroom as often. The crew decided to keep him on board. Bobby survived typhoid fever even though he went through the 4 most miserable months of his life. Unfortunately, he later gives it to most of his crew because of the poor sanitation on the ship. The flies, which had touched Bobby's feces, also touched various food items on the ship. The rest of the crew goes through symptoms like Bobby's as well as constipation and abdominal pain. Because of this, Bobby isn't able to make any money. He sails back to England and sinks the Great Turtle because it has become so stinky. With no ship, he continues life as a tailor, but he's ever so bored all the time and wishes he could have continued pirate life. If Bobby had been born a few centuries later, he would have had the opportunity to get a vaccination for typhoid fever. There are 2 ways one can obtain the vaccination: injection or pills. The injection would be given out at least 2 weeks before exposure, and one would have to take 4 pills at least a week before exposure. Both these vaccinations don't last forever. Booster shots are needed every 2 to 5 years depending on what method you get the vaccination. Side effects include fever, headache, and redness at the site of injection. Nothing too bad. Ever since the introduction of the vaccine in the early 1900s, mortality from typhoid fever has dropped down to about 200,000 worldwide, mostly in developing countries where sanitation is still a problem. However, in the U.S., only 1 in 786,127 people get it, and if identified, probably will live. Back in 1900, 31.3 in 100,000 people would die from typhoid fever. With vaccinations, we can avoid something like the plague in Athens in 430 BC, where a third of the population died from typhoid fever. So don't be like Bobby. Get vaccinated.